Hey, thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. This is a solo episode. If you are new here, what I do is talk to people that are empowering people. And then I also get to come on and give you guys a topic to think about because I love helping people shift the way they think. So thank you all so much for listening to the podcast, to continue to share with people that you love. You know how much I love that. Today, I want to talk about emotions, and I also want to talk about how we feel like we're always running out of time. Two common themes that I've been noticing. I notice it a lot, but recently, I feel like I've been talking about it a lot. So I just figured, why not bring it on here to the podcast? First, let's talk about emotions. Anytime I meet with people, we have our first session. I'm always emailing them, giving them an emotion chart. Let me tell you why I give them an emotion chart. Because if you're not new here, you know emotions matter. I give people an emotion chart because a lot of times we're not able to identify what we're feeling. We have all these things going on inside of us, and we don't know how to articulate it. I always say, like, imagine if you were to go to the doctor and you're bleeding, and the doctor's like, I don't know what's going on, you know? I feel like I would have a hard time not having some kind of diagnosis, right? And that would drive me insane. When it comes to how we're feeling, we've been feeling all of these things for so long, but we don't have a name for them. We don't have a name for them because society doesn't teach us about our emotions. Imagine if society taught us about emotions. Imagine if like mental health was just a common thing like pizza, right? The way we talk about pizza, if we talked about mental health that way, we would be so much more empowered. And the important part of being able to talk about your emotions is that your emotions won't be the lens in which you look at life under, right? So if I feel like I'm struggling with something, if I feel like I'm have some issues with like people that have left me in the past, and I haven't dealt with it, so I feel lonely. But maybe I'm not. Maybe I have people in my life, but my mind is so focused on the fact that like this person abandoned you in the past and the loneliness, it can't see what it has. A lot of times, people outside of you may be able to see the qualities in you or see the positivity that's happening. The reason why you can't see it is because that inner voice, that inner dialogue is going off and it's really trying to protect you, right? So when we don't deal with some of the things that we have gone through, what happens is our mind will stay on high alert. It's really doing what it's designed to do, interestingly enough, when you think about it. And so, like, if you can get a hold of like your thoughts, right? Because your thoughts control what you feel, your feelings, and then you start acting out or not acting on it. And a lot of times people are feeling stuck in life because they only have that past mental tape that continues to go off in their mind. So if you're somebody that really wants to work on your emotions, I would challenge you to think about like grabbing an emotion chart. You can even Google feelings wheel. The feelings wheel is so great because it gives you a multitude of different emotions to identify. And then you can have that language. So you look at the feelings wheel and you say, I feel X, whatever the feeling is. And then after that, you can start to think about why am I feeling this way, right? When you can understand your why, then you can actually work on making different choices, right? Like one of the things that in 2023 I think about is just how much there's a need for mental health services. I think about like how much we struggle with finding a therapist in 2023. And I think about how important it is for people to know that just because you don't have a therapist or have financial means to uh, get somebody to help you work on things, I really want to empower you to kind of use what you have. And a great way to start is thinking about like what you're feeling. And you know, if you have a hard time articulating the actual emotion, start to pay attention to your body and how your body responds. A lot of times, our body's going to give us a sign before it hits us logically. A way you can work on doing that, YouTube has these body scan meditations. I love doing them, especially if I feel kind of tight and I just want to like relax. And if you look for it, you can find a voice that works for you. There's so many of them. And you could put on like a little 5 minute one, a 2 minute one, a 10 minute one, right? You don't have to start with something that's a lot of minutes because that might feel too hard for you. And then it starts to just go from your head all the way down to your toes. And as it's talking and you're listening, you'll realize you're probably clutching your mouth, or you're probably raising your shoulders and not even knowing it. And then when you get to understand your body and like relaxing your body, you'll be able to understand when it starts tensing up, when your stomach starts turning, when your head starts pounding. A lot of times, I've had clients deal with like migraines, stomach issues, back stuff, right? And because I've been working with them, I'm able to help them say, hey, like this sounds like this started when X, Y, and Z started. And they're like, shoot, you're right. I did start feeling these stomachs turning when this was happening. A lot of times we're so in the thing that we're dealing with, we're not even paying attention to like how it transpired. So it's a really important, like you're with yourself 24/7. I say this a lot. You're with yourself all the time. We can really learn how our body works if we just work on taking time to pause and thinking about what we need. It doesn't have to be a long pause, right? It could be first thing in the morning thinking about your day. It could be at night when you get home before you go to bed, right? Really like making time to check in with yourself and ask yourself what you need. I know that this is really hard to do. You know why it's hard to do? Because you've been living a certain way for so long, and trying to work on getting your mind and your body to do it differently is such a challenging thing to try. But I want you to think about trying it, right? So when it comes to emotions, emotions are a part of the human experience. If we're not dealing with our emotions are dealing with us. So like if I were to this cup right here that I have, let's say this is my capacity. And if I start filling it up with things that are happening, eventually it's going to overflow, right? And so I think about the emotions that we have and how we stuff it and stuff it. And then when it overflows, what happens is that it can overflow in a way where, like medically, we're compromised, right? It can overflow in a way where we become irritable when we get home after work. It can overflow in a way that we find ourselves not going for that promotion or not going for that thing that we want to do, right? It really stops us in so many different ways. That's why it's always so baffling to me at how we got to the place of allowing mental health to be so stigmatized, right? So if you're somebody that is new to like a healing journey or just understanding mental health, and you struggle with like being vulnerable with yourself, I want you to know that's the one of the most best things you can do is be vulnerable with yourself, because you're not at the mercy of like what others do, right? If you find yourself struggling and feeling like everything is happening to you, like you have no control over like what's happening internally, I really want you to think about like, why don't I try something different? And checking in with your emotions is a great start. The second thing I want to talk about today, I want to talk about this idea of feeling like we're running out of time. I have a lot of conversations with people, and I feel like people struggle with where they are in life, which is fine, right? Like sometimes we may not have made the best choices. Sometimes it wasn't even our fault how we got where we got. And so we struggle with where we are. And then we'll tell ourselves like, man, I can't believe I'm still in this point. I can't believe I didn't do this. I can't believe I didn't do that. Like we stay in this place of pondering over what didn't happen or what could have happened. And as we're doing that, time is going by. A lot of the reason why that happens is because a lot of times we're comparing ourselves to what we're seeing our peers do. Another reason why this happens is because we don't realize this. There's a lot of messaging that takes place as we're growing up, right? So, for instance, like uh, I find that when people are going 29 to 30, that age range, they start to struggle looking at their peers. This one's married. We don't know if they're happily married. This one is an entrepreneur. This one just bought a house. This one just had a kid. So now we're looking at all of these things that we don't have, and then we're judging ourselves for where we are in life. I noticed at 49 to 50, right? These like turning points, these birthdays that come up, we start to look at our life and we start to struggle with where we are. I want to be clear, like there's nothing wrong with wanting more for your life, right? There's nothing wrong with not being satisfied with where you are in life. But then like the issue comes into place when we don't accept, right? It's like, okay, this is where I'm at in life. I didn't make the best choices, or choices were made for me that weren't my fault, right? Both of those are things. One is something that's in your control, one was something that was not in your control. And so, like, I recognize this is happening, but I'm not going to allow it to change like what my future looks like. And in order for me to do that, I really have to work on accepting what is, right? Accepting is something that is so hard to do. Why is accepting so hard to do? Because I think some people will say, like, but that's not what I want, or that's not like where I think I should be, right? And so, if we can work on accepting where we are in life, we can actually work on creating a plan for where we want to be. And I think that's where people miss the mark, is that there's no action plan in place, right? There's no action plan on what we can do to make changes in our life. And a lot of times, the reason why the action stops is because we tend to look at the barriers. We'll look at the things that we don't have to achieve those goals, instead of looking at, like, I don't have this, but let me look at what I do have. When I first thought about like talking about mental health publicly, because I realized like the need that was there, I became so engulfed in like a lot of books and just these like aha moments I started having, and I wanted to share it. I didn't have money to share it. I didn't have a building. This whole like idea of Celeste the Therapist was never in my mind at all. But what I did have, I had social media, and social media was free. And probably about like 2012, 2013, I started sharing motivational quotes. I was like, you know what? This is what I have. I had this thing, this fire in me where I'm like, I got to tell the people. I got to tell them about like mental health and like looking at it this way, because the way I started to change my mindset, I wanted to share with the world. That's what I said to myself. And then from there, I started sharing different motivational quotes. Then from there, I was like, oh, let me go on YouTube. And then from there, I went on Periscope. And then from there, I made a book. From there, I made a podcast. And you see how that goes. Like once I put one foot forward, then what happened is like other thoughts started to come into play once I started to put that first foot forward. If you don't put any foot forward, right? If you don't start the process, your mind's not going to be able to look for ways that you can work on it. I tell people, if you have whatever kind of car you have, you're going to start seeing that car on the road every day, right? And the reason why you're going to start seeing that car on the road every day is not because everybody went out and was like, oh, let me go get the same car that Celeste has. No, that's not what happens. The mind sees that car every day. So now the mind is able to pick it out quicker, right? I'm not really familiar with cars, but like I know I see my car a lot, and it's not because everybody has my car, it's because my mind has been focused on that car. So imagine if your mind is stuck in the negative, right? Like imagine if you continue to tell yourself that, dang, I can't believe I'm here. I'm never going to be anywhere. Your mind's only going to look for ways that you can never get anywhere. It's only going to look for the negative, right? We don't understand how powerful our thoughts control like what we do or not do. And so instead of like focusing on like where we're not, what if we start to put that energy into where we are trying to go? And if you start putting one foot forward into where you are trying to go, you'll find your mind starting to help you with looking at the ways that you can do that. I never in a million years wanted to have a pod. I used to have people talk about creating a podcast. They would sit on my couch and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I didn't even know what a podcast was. There were people talking about, I didn't know, like, I never wanted to be an author. The things that I've done were because I put one foot forward. So, if that makes sense around like, how do I work on starting where I'm at and using what I have? It can feel very scary, like the fear will start to set in. the fear sets in because it's something new, right? And it's important to normalize these emotions, which we just talked about earlier, and say, like, okay, I understand this fear is here because, like, I've never started this thing before. I've never said, like, I wanted to work on myself. You are literally introducing a foreign object to your system, right? We know if a foreign substance come to our body, we can get a fever, right? Like if we have some kind of illness, the fever is trying to reject that, right? We also know that if somebody needed a transplant, whether it's a lung transplant, a heart transplant, kidney transplant, there's a possibility that the body could reject it. It's like, doesn't make sense because my kidney is not good, my heart's not good. They're giving me a kidney that's better. They're giving me a heart that's better. Like, why would my body reject it? Because it's foreign, right? It's been used to the dysfunctional heart, it's been used to the dysfunctional kidney. Now, when you think about like your life and as you're trying to create change to work on yourself, I want you to think about that concept like, okay, this is something new. Like, my system has not experienced me working on myself. My system has not experienced me being consistent. But I'm going to tell myself that every day that I got this, right? That I'm going to do this. It's something you have to work on. It has to be a very intentional process. It's not going to happen by accident. It's going to feel hard, right? Feeling hard is something that's going to change, right? We know our feelings change, they don't stay the same. So it's something that's going to feel hard, but you got to do it anyway. And when it comes to like working on you, sometimes it may be hard to believe in yourself. It may be hard to believe that that's something that you can actually do. And I understand that. But I want you, like, whether you have like a child, a partner, or somebody in your life, like, you know what, I want to show them like what this is, especially if you're a parent, right? I think a lot of times as parents, we tend to pour everything into our kids, and we call ourselves doing all of these things for our kids, and then we're not doing anything for ourselves. Like, we're not being fair to ourselves. And that's not something that is good for our system when we are just constantly doing things for other people. We got to learn how to like pour into ourselves. And so if you're somebody that always feels like you're running out of time and feels like, and you feel like things aren't happening fast enough, I want you to just take a step back and ground yourself, right? And take a deep breath. Sometimes you can just take your hand, put it over your heart, and just breathe, right? And then just tell yourself, like, I'm okay. There's something powerful about telling yourself you're okay. Sometimes we don't realize how much we're rushing in life. Another reason why we find ourselves rushing in life is because society makes us think that we always have to be productive by doing something, right? It makes us believe that, like, if we're not doing something, then what are we doing? How about we trying to rest a little bit, right? Like, that's the unfortunate thing about society, is that it's so dysfunctional in the way that it moves, right? Every time I think about the fact that we don't learn about emotions, that we don't learn about mental health, I am unfortunately like have to say that that wasn't done by accident. That was done intentionally, because that's something that could create so much more, so much less stress that we have if we're able to recognize what's happening. We're the only species that will activate the amygdala, like the stressors that we have, with only our thoughts. There may not be a fire happening, but our system is always on 10 and feels like it's a fire happening. So part of like why you feel like you're rushing and you're not where you need to be is society. Part of it could be culture, right? Part of it could be the programming from TV and what you thought life was supposed to look like. And so it's okay to grieve that. Like, it's okay if you was like, you know what? Like, I had plans to be this or do that, and that didn't happen. Let's grieve that. Let's talk about that, right? Let's say, like, you know what, this feels sad. Like, I need to grieve the fact that I'm not here. But now grieving allows you to accept. And then once we grieve and once we accept, we can actually create a plan to do something different. Don't you want to create a plan to do something different? A big way that you can create a plan to do something different is looking at a wellness wheel, right? And a wellness wheel can allow you to look at all areas of your life, right? If you Google wellness wheel, you can look at all areas of your life And you can actually, and if you're watching this, I'm going to pull up a wellness wheel just to show you and help you look at what that actually looks like, so that when you're looking it up, you can have an idea of how you can kind of start your process. Um, so let me pull this up. Let me see. Share screen. Um, let's see. All right, so we pulled up the wellness wheel, and as you can see, they have the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, environment, financial. And these are kind of like base areas. If there was an area, let's say I wanted to really focus on the relationship I have with my kids, that's something that you can add as part of the wheel. But if you want to work on yourself and you want to like, where do I start, Celeste? Right? I've given you the emotion process, right? And after this, I'll pull up an emotion wheel. I'll pull up the feelings wheel so you can see it. And then this is the wellness wheel. This is how you create a plan. And so we go through each of these sections and we ask ourselves, like, how do I feel I'm doing in this area? Like, one being like, I'm not doing well at all. 10 meaning like, I'm doing really well. The reason why this is powerful is because there may be some areas that you're actually doing well in, and you can actually allow yourself to um, celebrate that, right? Because it's good to point out the things that are going well. And also, if you are looking to work on it. And I actually created a free video. I just realized that I was just thinking about this as I'm talking about it. I created, if you go to Celeste the Therapist /shop, sorry, celestetherapist.com/shop, there's a wellness wheel assessment where I actually break this down. So all you got to do is go to the website, and then you will put this in your cart, and the video of me talking about this will come to your email, and you can actually work on starting the process of that. The next thing I want to do is put up the feelings wheel for people that are watching this. And if you're not watching this, you can also just Google it. But look at this feelings wheel. I love this thing so much. We know bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad, happy, surprised, right? But look at all these other emotions that we don't talk about. Hostile, I feel jealous. We know jealous, but who wants to admit that they feel jealous? We talk about frustrated, exposed, inadequate, out of control, right? Look at all of these emotions. I want to say these are beautiful emotions. I know some of them don't feel well, but I say they're beautiful because guess what? These emotions let me know like what's going on with me. And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't really know what's going on with us. We just know we're struggling in life, but we don't understand like why we're struggling. And so those are two great tools that will really help you like think about like what am I feeling? The wellness wheel is like what do I need, right? So if this is something that's resonating for you, don't allow this to just be a feel good like podcast listen. I want you to think about, you know what, let me start the process now. As you're starting the process, I need you to understand that it has to be intentional, meaning like you put a sticky note on your computer, like don't forget to check in with your emotions. You put something in your alarm on your calendar, right? And that wellness wheel, you can like do it every 2 weeks. Like check in, okay, how am I doing financially? How am I doing spiritually? How's the plan going? Right? Like really checking in with yourself periodically to make sure you're staying in alignment in the direction you're trying to go. Because if you wait for society to do it, it's not happening, right? Like if you're waking up, checking your email for work, if you're waking up, checking social media, if you're waking up, doing everything but what has to do with you, you're choosing for society to dictate what your life looks like. And society does not care about our emotions, right? It wants us to spend money, feel insecure, and depend on it, right? And so if you're looking to do it a new way, I want to challenge you to try it this way. I just gave you 2 free resources that can really help you change your trajectory and do things a little bit different. I hope this was helpful. I hope this makes sense. If anything I ever say resonates for you, know that you can make a decision to do it like right now. Also know that it won't feel good, right? Remember the analogy of the foreign object, but you keep that goal in mind as you're doing this process. Make sure you share this episode with somebody that you love. Make sure you find me on all social media websites, all social media platforms: YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Literally, you can find me everywhere. All you got to do is search Celeste the Therapist. If you want to support me, check out my website. I got different ways you can support me. And I will